We'd like to thank you for joining us today. My name is Bill Baker at Firestorm. We're going to be talking about social media. Our co-host and sponsor today is the Rochester Business Alliance, and we're pleased to have a good relationship with them. You may follow us today, and we invite you to become our Facebook friend, Firestorm Solutions. Follow us on Twitter at FirestormSoul. There is a hashtag for this session, hashtag CrisisCoach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value, and Firestorm empowers you to manage risks and crises. Firestorm has expertise in crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communication, crisis public relations, and consequence management. Please keep in mind, though, that this presentation is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion. And the work product provided today must be read in conjunction with guidance from your organization's personal counsel. In addition, this information should not be interpreted as legal advice or legal opinion. The Rochester Business Alliance and Firestorm do present this Crisis Coach webinar series. Today's subject that will be presented by Karen Mazzullo, our Executive Vice President of Firestorm, is social media risk. Karen is an expert in social media, and she knows more than anyone else that I'm aware of. We invite you to go also to firestorm.com. You can review the past webinars in this series, and you can register for future webinars. This entire webinar series is underwritten by Rochester Business Alliance. Chip, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bill, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 7th in the series of the Crisis Coach. The Rochester Business Alliance is delighted to partner with Firestorm to bring you, our members, this extremely timely 45-minute discussion by Karen Mazzullo, the Executive Vice President, Social Media of Firestorm, and the Client Specialist for Social Media and Policy Services, covering, as you might expect, the subject of social media risk. I must admit that I do not participate in social media. The reason is simple. I've heard far too many disaster stories about the pitfalls of laying one's life, whether work-related or personal, open to review by total strangers. My son-in-law, a family law attorney, has used Facebook for years to arm himself for court by reviewing what his opponents in litigation have been doing. Jon Stewart, my source for the inside scoop, can often fill an entire broadcast on dirt gathered using social media, and I think you'll see John's picture coming up in the slides later on. Obviously, as I'm sure Karen will tell you over the next 40 minutes, social media has changed the dynamics of corporate crisis management. As you listen to Karen today, think about the actions you might take to maintain control of your information in a crisis situation. And when the program is over, contact us to talk about how we might help you with those actions. Now, here's Karen.
Well, thank you so much, Chip, and thank you, Bill. And hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We like to start our sessions with just a brief update on things that are going on in the world that we're talking about, that we're writing about, and that we feel that you as business owners and managers should be aware of. The first is an alert that has come through called the Heartbleed bug. It's a critical security vulnerability for OpenSSL. So when you sign on to a website and you see that it's a secure socket connection, there's a vulnerability in that. We have all three of these issues that I'm referencing you can find on the Firestorm blog and read a little bit more information. On the Heartbleed one, no matter what size your company, whether you're small or whether you're very large, talk to your IT experts and get their opinion on whether you're vulnerable, whether your systems are vulnerable, what patches are being put in place by some of the companies you may use, where your servers are housed, etc. Rackspace just recently found they were vulnerable and have issued a patch. And then some advice says that you want to wait a couple of days and then start the process, very painful as it may be, of changing all of your passwords on any website where there is a secure socket layer or a secure socket connection. So that would be your banking websites, your finance websites, and really virtually any others that you use, especially those on social media. So if you maintain your company's social media accounts, you'll also want to make sure that you go through that process of changing your passwords. Please don't use the same password on every site. When the Adobe hack happened a couple of months ago, and a review of all the passwords that were compromised was released, the most common password was 123456. So please don't do that. And make your passwords complex, make them relatively long, make note of them, keep them in a secure place, and move forward. So you can read a little bit more about the Heartbleed bug on our website, and also there are numerous technical articles out there on the web and in the major media. Additionally, for those of you, no matter the size of your business, but if you're consumer-facing business as well, or more specifically, we want to be paying attention right now to some of the websites where there are online customer reviews and how those are handled. There's a lot going on right now, and there has been for about 3 years with Yelp. A lot of lawsuits back and forth regarding Yelp's review filter and the criteria they use to either publish or disregard positive comments that you may have received from customers that they feel are overly positive, and the prominence of negative reviews that may be from an attacker being raised higher in a consumer who visits the site's view. And it's very damaging to especially smaller businesses that rely on those reviews, so hotels, restaurants, shoe repair, anything that's consumer-facing. And there's an interesting court case going on right now regarding a rug cleaning business. So we ask you to stop by, educate yourself a bit in this area. And the one thing I will say is that if you are a consumer-facing business and you do not own your Yelp page, certainly do that, just so you are at least in control of it. If you need any assistance with that, you can contact us after this session. We'll be happy to chat with you. The last piece that we're watching right now is there is an interesting form of extortion going on in website hijacking. And Meetup is a very popular social website that's used for business meetups out in the community. And it starts on the web in a social way, and then it's face-to-face. And Meetup is a very highly trafficked website, and they were extorted for $300. Someone actually stole their domain, hacked into them, stole the domain. And this happens every day, and most companies pay the $300 and get their websites back. And Meetup's CEO refused to do it. He refused to be extorted, and he documented every step of what was going on, because his feeling was if he was extorted once, he would be extorted twice. And I really admire his approach, but it's an excellent outline and story of what happened, and it's a great conversation to have with your IT team. I worked for a very large corporation about 7 years ago, and the ownership of domains had transferred when employees transitioned in or out of the company. And there was a 3-month period where there was a gap in the intellectual property being transferred to the right person. And the company lost a key domain in the UK. We had a very large UK presence. And it cost the company $50,000 to get that domain back, and we had to do it. So good lesson, good learning. We're going to talk a little bit now about what's in the news and what happened yesterday. What happened yesterday in Pennsylvania was at in a school system. And for those of you that are in the business environment, I want you to be thinking about this in terms of what if there were a crisis at my business and these were my employees affected, because we're going to talk about some of the interesting things we observe when a situation like this occurs. It was a tragic situation yesterday. It could have been much more serious in that a young man came onto campus at his high school before classes had actually begun and began stabbing people. And I'm sure you've seen in the news, there was an hours-long situation. The attacker was quickly apprehended and tackled by the vice president in the school, or the assistant vice president. There was many tales of heroism, but one of the things that we saw very clearly, and we've seen this in issues of workplace violence, school violence, is that the news media and the cameras are immediately there on people who are in shock and in no state to be giving an interview. More important, people take to social media to vent, to connect, to talk when they are in this state of shock. And if you'll see on the right, the tweet from Jeffrey Kramer, that's ABC News reaching out to a student asking to use one of the images the student posted of his brother. There's one student her entire Twitter feed was talking about how in shock she was, how she was shaking. And again, people take to social media to discuss these types of issues. Additionally, the name or the suspected name of the alleged attacker was released by the students on social media within minutes. You can see that these tweets show on the bottom 7 hours, 8 hours ago. Those were screen grabs that I took probably at around 7 o'clock in the evening or 6 o'clock in the evening. And so the incident happened before school, so you can see those. The name of the alleged stabber was released prior to that being confirmed, that students' parents being notified, the parents of those children that were attacked being notified. So the way news and information gets out today, it is split second. We used to have that sort of golden 24 hours where we could think about what our response was going to be and how we were going to approach the public and the media, and we do not have that opportunity anymore. So if this were a situation in a workplace and these were your employees, would they be taking to social media and talking about what happened? Would they be naming someone in your organization? Additionally, this young man is quite a heroic young man. He is someone who stepped in between the attacker and two students. He suffered a knife wound on his arm. He also had the presence of mind to pull the fire alarm to alert students that something was going on. But the most interesting thing about this is that immediately upon being in the hospital, he took a selfie of himself. So again, if this were in a workplace incident, if this were one of your employees, is this the kind of information that you might be managing? So why should I worry about social media? Well, Chip was very articulate in why you should worry about social media. It's sort of darned if you do and darned if you don't. It's important to understand that social media can be used for certainly marketing. It's a great way to get your product and your name out. Facebook is great if you're business to consumer. Twitter really works well for business to business and business to consumer. Instagram is terrific if you're a company that has some very compelling images new product launches. If you're a garden center, what a great way to promote your product. Restaurants have great fun promoting great, beautiful dishes. But if there was a crisis or a disruption to your business, social media can also be an excellent source of information that you control. It's important to at least have a presence and own your name on primary social networks so that A, no one else can message pretending to be you, and B, in the case of a crisis or a situation where you need to communicate to a broad audience quickly, you have the ability to do that. Along with that, however, comes some regulation and risk depending on your industry. Where does your organization stand today on social media? Do you know how you use it? We've had a situation recently in a client we've been working with where a former employee who owned the social media account, the primary Facebook account, that had a significant amount of traffic and participants on it, a lot of likes as well, left the company in a disgruntled manner and took the Facebook account with them, basically hijacked it, because the owners or the management of the company never assured that they too were the primary managers of that account. It's a little bit complex on how it works on Facebook, but you must make sure that you too are involved in the ownership of your accounts. That employee not only hijacked the Facebook account, but then changed the name of the Facebook account to be anti that organization. Created a lot of distrust and confusion around people who had been brand advocates of that business. And they viewed the management as being somewhat incompetent by not even able to protect themselves in that regard. So it's really important that you right now, no matter the size of your business, take stock of where you are in social media and then have a good look at how your program needs to improve. How much progress have you made in some initiatives in that regard? Is it only a marketing focus? Or have you also gotten everybody in your organization at the table and talked about how else can we leverage these tools and how can we make sure that we're using them in the best way and that we follow best practices? And then how do you identify what your priorities need to be for your specific company in regard to social media? Figure out what your gaps are, do a gap analysis. And not only that, but make sure those people who supply services to you in the social media regard are prepared as well so that they're on board with your program and your plan. And how do you know? And are you sure? And right now, over the past, since about 2008, we've been seeing evolving laws and regulations that impact the use of social media. Now, we've seen those specifically coming from the SEC and FINRA and the FFIEC, but we're seeing other organizations and regulatory bodies start to adopt and adapt these same, it's really social media guidance at this point in time. However, there are 5 in common categories around social media risk management. Certainly data protection and privacy. There's quite a bit of concern about confidential data being leaked out via social media. Employee rights. All you have to do when we're done with this session is Google the National Labor Relations Review Board and social media lawsuits, and you'll have thousands and thousands of case citations from everything from Facebook to LinkedIn citing case law that has recently been decided in favor of employee rights. Certainly disclosure and third-party endorsement. What is your governance and oversight responsibility? And then how do you archive and retain information? What I want to do now is just very briefly, I want to talk about what happened in West Virginia, because not only is it a great crisis management example, crisis communication example, but it's a very interesting social media study as well. The way I found out about this this chemical contamination spill in West Virginia was by my sister, who lives in the contamination zone, and I found out on Facebook. Sadly, that's how quite a lot of people who are in the contamination zone found out. And they didn't find out until hours after the situation happened. When a situation like this occurs, there are many parties to the event. Many people believe that when something like this happens, we have to control the media. And we have to make sure that we know what the media is saying about us and how it's being presented. In this situation, and in all crisis situations, you must control the messaging. And by having good, solid social media accounts that people can find easily through links on your website and through other messaging, you're making sure that you're controlling the message. And it's not a media event. There are many parties to this event. As we look through this little circle of images, we have the people themselves who are affected and government officials. We have Erin Brockovich, and when we talk about something like this is someone who's taking advantage of your crisis or event in order to push forward their own agenda. And you'll see that Erin Brockovich was using Facebook as well. There are YouTube videos and all types of other information that's coming out from media outlets with your spokespeople. We have officials that may be involved, government officials, in this case the governor. We have the lovable Jon Stewart delivering his version of the news, other regulatory bodies. And one of the things that's most important about this specific instance is that, and if you hear a little sound in the background, that is my office assistant, Roxanne, who is a dog. As we see in this situation, this contamination of water not only affected individuals and their water supplies, but it virtually closed down neighboring businesses. Now, at no time in the first, I think it was 36 hours, did Freedom Industries, the company responsible for the contamination, contact or work with a business organization or group, such as RBA, to collaborate with other manufacturers or businesses on what the impact was going to be to them. Pardon me. Restaurants, bars, daycare centers, all businesses that used water. So when we think of manufacturers who use water as a part of that manufacturing process, excuse me, everyone was sent a message to cease operations immediately. Now, as you know, this went on for a couple of weeks, and many people still will not drink the water in this area. Could your business afford to be down for 2 weeks because of something you had nothing to do with? And pardon me, and how would you communicate that information? Well, one of the ways it was communicated was by the president of Freedom Industries in a YouTube video that we'll talk about in a moment. But this person is the fiancé of another person who is named as president of Freedom Industries, because during this time of this crisis, the company was being sold. So no one knew who the president was and who the official spokesperson was going to be. The fiancé decided to take to Facebook in what I really consider a true Marie Antoinette moment. She says, "It's been an inconvenience and a concern to everyone. However, no one and no thing has been harmed due to this leakage. Just so you know, the boys at the plant made and drank coffee this morning. I showered and brushed my teeth this morning, and I'm just fine." As a business owner, a business leader in your community, it is incumbent that we also train our families on their usage of social media. They must be responsible with information that we share, and we do share information at home. Pardon me for just 1 second. I'm going to take a sip of water. I apologize. I got something in my throat. So this, to me, is a great example for you to sit down, buy your team a pizza for lunch, and talk about just this one slide and say, have we talked to our families about what we do at work? And if so, do we know if that information is being shared in an inappropriate way? And I'll tell you, folks, there's nothing the web loves more than a social media fail. The first thing we do when we see a fail is everybody goes and tweets about it. And that's exactly what happened in the interview that Gary Southern, the, I guess, president at that time of Freedom Industries, in a very, very interesting press conference that went on for about 15 minutes. There's so much that went wrong in this press conference that if anybody would like, if you'll write webinars at firestorm.com and request the link to the full video, I'll make sure to send it to you. If it not only does he drink bottled water during this crisis where he contaminated the water, he walks off camera a couple of times and allows the reporters to actually pull him back. When he tries to leave, one of the reporters says, hey, 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 we're not done with you yet, and he actually comes back. He doesn't have any sort of script that he's followed, and he has a true Gulf oil leak moment when he says, we're tired, we've been through a lot. This has been played, it's been auto-tuned, just don't let this happen to you. And, I'd like to talk more about that, but that is a whole session on its own. So during this time, there is more social media going on in the background, and this is coming from the officials. The officials did not leverage social media well. Governor Tomlin's office very, very rarely posted updates on their Twitter account or Facebook account, which was very frustrating to people who leveraged social media as one of their prime ways of communication. We're talking about some areas that are not too rural, but also extremely rural. So there was a real mix of, do we go door to door? Do we use the telephone? Do we use social media? Do we do all of those things? During this, the company then filed for bankruptcy to protect itself. In that bankruptcy court testimony, again, we're talking about messaging. This statement was shared via social media hundreds of thousands of times when that president, Gary Southern, called the 12 days since the company's chemical spill completely chaotic. Now, if any of you experience a crisis, do not describe it as being completely chaotic. Your people are trained to respond to crisis, and that is the message. Our people are trained, they're responding well, and just as we were prepared to do. He also said he was upset in court because the spill was causing perception problems for the firm. So he has his own little Marie Antoinette moment there as well. Of course it was causing perception problems, but it was his responsibility and the company's responsibility to control that messaging. And Freedom Industries didn't report until much later that there was an additional chemical in the water. So any credibility, any hope they had of fixing this problem was gone. When we look at social media messaging, when we look at face-to-face messaging, when someone puts a microphone under your chin, whether it's virtually or face-to-face, the first thing when there is a crisis that we know you must do is humanize the crisis. If you are perhaps a restaurant that has had an issue with a building code violation, one of the things you first want to say is, you know, we too are customers of our own product, of our own restaurant, and we are working diligently to make sure that this does not affect our community, our customers, and our own families. You make yourself human and a part of the process by saying those very succinct pieces. You then defer to the experts. So in the water company case, all he had to say is, we sincerely regret the incident that has happened. We to our customers of our own product. We use the water, our families and our children. Currently, this is what the EPA and other experts in the field have asked us to do, and we are working jointly with them. And here are the facts. At 7:30 a.m. in the morning, a leak was identified. And that is all you have to do is remember those 4 pieces of a 24-part process that one of our expert council members, Linda Tavlin, speaks on. Those 4 pieces to me are critical in crisis messaging and work beautifully on social media because you can break all of your messaging down into those 4 key statements. Now, once you've messaged, who is listening? Well, as it turns out, pretty much everyone. This is an example that you may recall from 2012 where a young woman on a business trip took a side trip to what we consider one of the most hallowed places in the United States, and that's Arlington National Cemetery. She took a picture of herself pretending to yell and using a specific finger in front of that sign. For some reason, she shared it on Facebook, thinking it was amusing. And as it turns out, everyone saw it. When I say everyone, I mean everyone. If you Google her name, not even the incident, but just her name, there are more than 33 million results. And there are some certainly that are not directly related to her, but most of them are. This young lady worked for a company of about 30 people. It's an adult care facility that works with developmentally disabled adults. And this poor little company was suddenly in the national spotlight. Their website crashed. The director was inundated with phone calls. Suddenly there were media trucks in their front lawn disturbing the patients and the residents of this care facility because of something one employee did, one moment, stupid moment in time. I have to say that the director of this facility, I don't know where she received her media training, but she handled every aspect of this perfectly via social media. She kept people informed of what she was doing in a clear and concise way. She announced that the 2 employees that were involved in the incident were no longer employees. We deeply regret any disrespect to the members of the military and their families. She humanized it. This incident and publicity has been very upsetting to the learning disabled population we serve. She made themselves part of the process. To protect our residents, any comments, well-intentioned, will be deleted. We appreciate your concern and understanding as we focus on the care of the community. And because of the way she handled it, her response suddenly became more important than what this employee did. This, to me, is an excellent example of a small company handling a very, very media-focused situation, and for a small company, that was really a challenge. When you're thinking about who's listening, you must remember you're not just talking to media outlets. You're talking to your customers, authorities, regulators, employees, business leaders in your community, your board, the public at large, travelers, suppliers, vendors, everyone who's involved with your organization in any way. And that must be taken into consideration in any messaging you do. And then for that messaging, where do people go when they need to learn something about your company? If there's a food recall, if there's an incident on your property, if there's a crisis with a product, where am I going to go for updates? And how do you know? Have you measured that? Am I going to go to your Twitter account, your LinkedIn page? Am I going to Google you? Am I going to go to your website, and is your website going to crash if I do? Do you have a dark website, a website that you use specifically when there is a crisis, where you've done load testing so that you know that site's not going to go down? Do you already have messaging on it in case something happens, that you can quickly modify the language, get the dark website up, and get that messaging out on your social media channels? And then how do you know? At Firestorm, we are huge proponents of monitoring. My team monitors for a number of our clients on a daily basis. And I wanted to give you an example of a 2-hour period of just a random monitoring statement I used in the application partner that we use. I just put in, "I hate my job," as a phrase. In a 2-hour period, there were 693 mentions. 52% of those were female. In that 2-hour period, the potential for people to see those messages at its highest period was 317,000, 46,000 at its median. In just a 2-hour period, there were 499 tweets, 109 blog posts or news posts, 41 Facebook posts, and 24 G+ posts. Plus, there were some other smaller instances from other applications that are automatically monitored by the application that we use. But in just this one period, I thought, gosh, that's really interesting. On all of these different pieces, I can then drill in to what those different posts are. So I can look at the individual 499 tweets and, using the application, respond to those if I need to. I can also download, archive, and report on all of the messaging, incoming and outgoing. I was curious about why I hate my job seemed to have this little peak during this 2-hour time period. I decided to look at it, and I started seeing some words that I wasn't quite sure why in the word cloud that the application delivers to me. Court stenographer, court reporter, cases. So I thought, maybe, I wonder if I accidentally got something wrong in my search terms. Let me dig in a little bit more to this. Interestingly, most of these messages were coming out of the United States. And when I dug into that a little bit more, I found out that there was a rogue court reporter who, instead of taking down the transcript from the court trial, had actually been typing only "I hate my job" in sort of the Shining kind of an example. So I just accidentally hit upon this. But what that shows us is that by monitoring our own brand, even your physical address, if you're a company that may, for some reason, be prone to the Occupy movement, parking on your front step, or eco-terrorism, monitoring allows you to look into not only your audience for engagement and marketing, but is an outstanding tool to get ahead of a crisis and then be able to manage the messaging around that crisis, so that not only people who interact with your brand as consumers feel trust and confidence in your ability to communicate effectively, but your employees, your senior leadership also is informed of and knows what's going on. You need to be ahead of what's going on. This is echoed in regulatory notices that, again, we're seeing from FINRA, the SEC, the NLRB, the NAIC, the FFIEC, and many, many more. There are some very clear regulatory notices that have been issued on the use of social media and business communications, especially for those in the financial industry. There are very complex rules. I think we saw that with Netflix. That is a separate session, but basically the CEO of Netflix on his Facebook account congratulated his team for a great job and said that they were doing really great and looking forward to the next quarter. And the SEC came down very hard on him for using that as a distribution channel for for Outlook statements. So social media risk allows us to address a variety of pieces from account hacking to third-party attacks. Now, let's look at a little bit about what that might mean, because in the FIEC guidelines, there is an expectation of management of risks, and a lot of that is around third-party risk. Gartner in 2010 said by the end of 2013, half of all companies will be asked to produce material from social media websites for e-discovery, and we have absolutely found that to be true, that you must manage social media. Any risk of harm to your consumers, compliance and legal risk, operating risk, and reputational risk. So what is that third-party risk? It's about outsourced social media vendors, those who create and publish content for your company, outsourced applications that could be hacked, third parties that publish to your properties for you, those you interact with, and third parties that discuss your brand, your company, your employees, products, services, so not necessarily on your own accounts. That requires monitoring. A couple of examples of that was when major media sites were hacked through a third-party vendor called Outbrain by the Syrian Electronic Army. Negative news was suddenly inserted that people thought was true. You'll probably remember at one time there was even a messaging out that the White House had been attacked. The stock market took a little jitter for a moment until it realized that that wasn't true. The court is currently upholding the FTC's power to sue hacked companies now on behalf of consumers. So your social media risk program must include a governance structure with your board or senior management, clear policies and procedures, third-party contractor due diligence, great employee training, oversight for monitoring, and we can help you with this area, all these areas, audit compliance, keeping records, reporting to your board or senior management, and of course, periodic review. We have a maturity rating for this, and one of the things we've always said about social media is whether you're one person or 100,000, the social media voice of your company must be mature. And we have a maturity rating that we can help you with so that you can understand at what point you are in from stage 1, where everything is a surprise, to stage 4, where good practices, mature practices are indoctrinated into your culture. Please understand that social media is a great tool for communication, especially in a crisis and for marketing, but risk is escalating, just like with any tool. The risk dynamics complicate your compliance issues, and new regulations are on the rise. Your senior leadership is responsible for oversight, and regulators are using social media to identify and target specific companies. You must expect greater enforcement with fines and penalties for noncompliance. When there is a crisis and you're messaging through social media or in person, tell the truth. Don't spin it. Credibility is paramount. Always identify and train your spokespeople and have backups. And don't be defined by the event. Invent the future and embrace the families, your community, and those infected. Monitor and adjust your messaging as need be. Remember that social media is media, just another tool in the toolkit. Speed, however, today is quality, and there's a brand and reputation impact that you control the messaging of. That's it. That's our predict, plan, perform process for social media risk management. I've very much enjoyed giving you this brief overview today. If you'd like to contact us, you can find us at firestorm.com. Reach out to us via our contact tab and mention RBA if you would like us to go ahead and contact you for a no-fee self-assessment in many areas, and one of those would be in social media. Chip, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you to the Rochester Business Alliance.
Thank you, Karen. This time of year, we've got lots of potholes that we look out for, and you've identified a number more for us. Thanks again.
Thank you, and everyone have a great day. You can view the recording or share the recording at the link you used to register. We appreciate your time. This will conclude our session for today.
Thank you, Karen.